They breathe.
Find the defendant guilty.
Now to Minneapolis in the U.S. now, where white former police officer Derek Chauvin was found guilty over the death of George Floyd on all three charges: second-degree murder and third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. Our correspondent Dan Williams has been following the trial and is joining us live from Minneapolis. Dan, morning from Beijing. First of all, tell us more about the jury's verdict.
Yeah, that's right. The jury took some 10 hours or so. Many had expected longer, it had to be said, given all the amount of witnesses, all the evidence that they had to weigh up. And of course, they needed a unanimous verdict. Every single one of the 12-member jury had to decide, had to agree. And as I say, some 10 hours or so later, that came through. Now, Derek Chauvin sat fairly passively, not a huge amount of emotion as the verdict was then read out one by one, and again longer term when the judge then went through with the jury to ensure that they had indeed made those decisions by themselves, and then he was handcuffed and he was led out of court. He is now being transferred to the Minnesota Correctional Facility, Oak Park Heights. It's around 25 miles from where I'm standing here right now. Now, sentencing, that only takes place in around 8 weeks from now. We also know, of course, that second-degree murder does come with a maximum charge of 40 years in prison. But of course, that's not necessarily the end of the matter. Even then, there is really very much a chance to appeal. We heard just in closing arguments on Monday, just with the defense once again motioning for a mistrial, and that was certainly not the first time. And of course, even before this even started, there was moves by the defense to try and work towards a mistrial, saying that it would be very difficult to have this trial take place in Minneapolis, given everyone knows about the publicity around this case. So that could still come, of course, and very much likely given these high-profile cases. But for tonight, Derek Chauvin is once again back in a prison cell.
Yeah, and we see the general public celebrating the verdict, but what about the police department and the government? How are they reacting?
Yeah, absolutely. Just outside the courthouse, we saw there was real tension as we were waiting for this verdict to be announced. Suddenly there was the announcement guilty, and there was like an eruption almost of complete relief. There were people crying in this park that's just to the side of me outside this courthouse. As I say, real emotions, raw emotions on show. Now, many here saying that this can only be the first step, and that is actually something that the governor here, the Minnesota governor Tim Walz, has also been saying today, saying that this is an important step for justice. The work is not over, and also said this to the Floyd family: "We grieve for you," he said. Now, for the Floyd family, they too have used this spotlight to call for greater change, to stop this police brutality, which has been widely publicized and has had a number of other cases as well. So that being the first thing, but they also overwhelmingly just as well have the relief that justice today has been served for George Floyd. Let's hear what they had to say, the brothers of George Floyd.
It's been a long journey, and it's been less than a year. And the person that comes to my mind is 1955. And to me, he was the first George Floyd. Today, we are able to breathe again.
We got the verdict we wanted.
Amen.
Amen. We got on our knees. Some of us stood up. I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that my grandmother, my mother, my aunts, they just got to see this history made. I'm grateful my brother's not here. I'm grateful and I'm proud of him.
Now we have to remember, of course, that thousands of law enforcement, National Guard, police have all been called in here to attempt to keep the peace, be ready for any potential trouble. I have to say right now, there were hundreds of protesters outside this courthouse just a couple of hours ago. Most, if not all, have pretty much gone on somewhere else, in a way, a sense perhaps that their work has been achieved, at least for today. Saying that, there have just been a few bangs, so we wait to see, but certainly real relief, a real sense of justice here in Minneapolis this evening.
All right, thank you very much. Dan Williams reporting from Minneapolis. Now let's go to Roy Reitenberg in Washington. Hello there, Roy. So tell us about some political reactions in the country's capital city.
Yeah, of course, reaction from top officials here at the White House. We heard from the Vice President Kamala Harris and the President Joe Biden. For Harris, this is clearly personal. She, of course, is half black of Caribbean descent and half South Asian. She is a woman of color, the first to hold such a high position. She said that black men are sons, are fathers, are brothers. And she noted that a verdict won't heal, quote, the pain that existed for generations. She is one of the people saying that this was a measure of justice, but it is not the same as equal justice, suggesting that this is the beginning or perhaps a step towards justice, but by no means the end of the struggle for people of color. Now, her boss, Joe Biden, earlier in their day angered critics by chiming in, saying he was praying that the verdict would be the right verdict, that the evidence, in his view, was overwhelming. Critics say he was interfering with the judicial process. He brushed that off, and after the verdict, noted in his words that it was murder in the full light of day. And he said that what happened, that what transpired in the death of George Floyd, took the blinders off for the whole world to see that systemic racism in the U.S. was a stain on the nation's soul. Some powerful words there from the president. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
This can be a giant step forward in the march toward justice in America. This is a time for this country to come together, to unite as Americans. There can never be any safe harbor for hate in America.
Now, in a quite touching moment, the president also called Floyd's family. He reiterated his past comments where he said his daughter Gianni told his daughter Gianni that her father would change the world, and he echoed that again. Very sweet and touching moment. But he has been criticized for not having done more as vice president under Barack Obama, America's first black president, of course. Obama also speaking out on Tuesday, along with his wife, calling for more reforms to eliminate racial bias in the criminal justice system. And that's where the momentum is heading. Kamala Harris, when she was senator, co-sponsored the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. That's being pushed forward now in the House by Representative Karen Bassett, passed in the House. And now there's even a black Republican senator in the Senate that's supporting it. It would eliminate things like chokeholds, no-knock warrants, the types that saw Breonna Taylor get killed. Also insist on body cameras, reform policing, also pushing for the removal of military equipment among police ranks. Expect a lot more in that direction now in the momentum and in the wake of this verdict.
Have you heard, Roy, have you heard any different voices from a celebration of the verdict?
Well, we have heard from some on the right suggesting that justice was served, that this should be the end to some of the protests, the violent protests that have gripped the United States in recent years, the types that led to the creation here in Washington, D.C. of Black Lives Matter Plaza, and have really pitted, what some say, black activists against police. Talk of, quote, defund the police or abolish the police. It's really a right-wing talking point, and expectations that now that the verdict is there, at least in this case, that perhaps some of that momentum would go away, and a lot of defense of the police coming forward. But What we're seeing here really, at least for those who are pushing for this, is that this is the time. Black and brown people are voting more, they're holding their elected representatives accountable, and they want action. They say for every George Floyd incident where a Derek Chauvin is being charged, is being convicted, there are countless more that are ignored. They say that has to stop.
All right, thank you very much, Roy Rattenberg, reporting from Washington. And you're now watching CGTN. We've been following Derek Chauvin's case's verdict. Stay with us.
I can breathe.
Find the defendant guilty.
In the U.S. state of Ohio, a police officer has shot and killed a black teenage girl in the city of South Columbus. The victim has not been officially identified, but was named as 15-year-old Makia Bryant by a relative, and Hazel Bryant. Hazel says the victim called the police because someone in her house was abusing her, and a woman identified as Tay Jones wrote on Facebook that she had witnessed the shooting and posted video purportedly from the scene. And she says the girl had a knife because somebody tried to jump her. And she also says the police officer who shot her never told her to put down the knife. The 911 call that brought police to the scene had reportedly cited an attempted stabbing. Now, a wave of protests over the George Floyd case erupted in New York. Our reporter Will Denslow is there. Will, hello there. Update us on what's been happening there.
Well, just a few hours ago, there were several hundred protesters here at the Barclays Center here in Brooklyn. Now, this was the site where last summer there were a number of days of protests after the murder of George Floyd. Now, back then, a year ago almost, there was a real sense of anger here in the community here in New York City, people for calling for radical change when it came to policing. Now today that mood somewhat different, more of a sense of relief here in New York City, but still the mood that more needs to be done. Of course, the death of Daunte Wright in Brooklyn Center in the Minneapolis area a few days ago just points to that need for, according to people here, for more to be done when it comes to systemic change in US policing. Now that was very much picked up on by New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo. He says that accountability is not justice. He wants to see anger being changed into more meaningful reform going forward. That again very much reaffirmed by New York City's Mayor Bill de Blasio. He has called for calm. He said that more needs to be done when it comes to carrying out radical change when it comes to policing in the United States. Of course, over the last year, New York City has taken a number of steps to make changes to policing to try and address what the mayor says are systemic problems of racism built into these kinds of institutions. So certainly seen as a move of progress here in New York City, but the overwhelming feeling from those here on the ground is that yes, things seemingly moving in the right direction, but far more needs to be done both here in New York City and across the US.
Thank you very much. William Denslow reporting from New York. For more on the verdict, we're now joined by our current fast commentator, Mr. Einar Tangen. Einar, as a former prosecutor in the US, how do you see this verdict? Do you see it as a fair one?
Well, from a prosecution point of view, I was also a defense attorney. It was fair. I mean, the evidence was overwhelming, and it was that tape. You cannot play a tape like that for 9.5 minutes and seeing a man die literally in front of you and not be touched. Obviously, the testimony by the police captain, the people who were on the force in charge of training and things like that, clearly this was not an authorized action, and it ended in the death of this man. But that's only the beginning of the problem.
Indeed. Well, the jury is in the spotlight, actually. Everybody was waiting for the jury's verdict to come out. A jury, as Americans, or most of the Americans think, as the only or the most important element of democracy. The democracy is not about Capitol Hill, it's not about White House, it's about jury. But do you think in this case there is a possibility or not that the jury may be influenced by protesters or politicians like manslaughter?
Well, there's always a possibility. I mean, the judge did not sequester when it was requested. There were obviously inflammatory statements made by Maxine Waters. They had already gone into deliberation by the time that Joe Biden weighed in, so that would not have been a factor. But you know, this confluence of where politics and the law meet has always been it. The reason they had jury systems is because they didn't want judges who could be manipulated or influenced or bribed deciding the cases of ordinary people. They thought it would be safer to have these other things do it. But that does not mean that it is completely, correct or able to render the best verdict. So there's going to be appeals in this case. And it's going to be mostly about this.
So you think the outcry actually makes a lot of importance here?
Yeah,
or makes some importance here?
Yeah, I do think
because there is a discussion in the U.S. that some people say it's not the system that is working; it is people who are making the system work.
Well, in this particular case, I think both the system worked and the people within it. Now remember, every system is just composed of individuals, and shouldn't be seen as ideological. The problem in the United States is that you've had a division socially, economically, politically, even down to racial issues and religious issues. And as that has happened, people have tended to move to communities where they're not there. The face of crime in America is a young male and minority. So at this juncture, you have a country where the demographics are changing, where many white people feel threatened, that you've seen the rise of the right. And unfortunately, minorities see themselves as either targets in the case of Asians, or as, in essence, inmates in a system, in a country, which views them as guilty of crimes simply because of the color of their skin.
And there is also a big question mark on the speed of the verdict, because in the past few years, as we've seen, that similar cases like a police shooting, it may take several months to investigate, but this time it just came out very soon, much sooner than before. Why?
Well, I mean, that tape says it all. I mean, you just cannot get beyond it. It's the reason that they opened the case with that. It's the strongest piece of evidence. It is one that I don't even know people who are on the far right can say, well, you know, nothing happened. Chauvin's defense attorney tried to bring question to it. That's his job. Don't blame him for doing his job, but it wasn't successful. In this case, the system did in fact work. But there are real questions about how the system within the system is working. If you have something that's blatantly unfair to a large percentage of your population, simply saying that we have a system that only works occasionally to redress that is not the way that you can run a full society.
Well, talking about the star witness, the more than 9 minutes long video, how much do you think technology weighs in the judicial system or the criminal justice system in the United States, when everyone is holding a phone, everyone could possibly recording everything they see, including policing, and making the whole world the witness of a trial?
It's a double-edged sword. In one instance, the number of prosecutions and convictions of police officers has gone up with the advent of cameras, the ability to record that. On the other hand, we've all seen what has happened on social media, where somebody tries to capture or doctor video in order to create fame for themselves or to get back at people. There has to be a lot of very careful thinking about how you use this kind of evidence. But in this particular case, it was the only thing that prevented this man from dying ignominiously, unknown to others, simply another casualty of a race war that should not be.
Right, and a lot of people say it's not a victorious end, and this verdict is only a beginning, as what you said as well. So what might come up? I mean, more fighting to be done on what?
Well, you just reported on a story of a 15-year-old girl who was killed under questionable circumstances. Obviously, there's a purported video that will play into it. But even as this trial was going on, we saw a 14-year-old boy killed, Hispanic boy. We saw other mass shootings within the U.S. The problem, you can point to the problem as the police, but it isn't really the police. All right, the issue is the society itself, which is turned against each other. And until you solve those underlying problems, blaming the symptoms will not change anything.
Right, and last quick question. How big impact do you think this will have in the racism in the larger scale, including the hate crimes against Asians in the U.S.?
Well, against Asians, I mean, this is a situation where the majority of people want to forget. They say the right, the right verdict was reached. Now let us move on. All right. The rest, minorities, Asians, and the rest of the minorities will feel that this is something they want to remember and they want to see more of. So once again, a nation divided.
All right. Thank you very much. China Tanganao, current affairs commentator. Now, the murder conviction of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin comes 331 days since George Floyd's death. And here's a recap of the key moments through the 3-week-long trial.
Derek Chauvin, a white former Minneapolis police officer, was convicted on Tuesday of murdering African-American George Floyd.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Thank you.
On May 25, 2020, Minneapolis police officers responded to a call about a possible counterfeit $20 bill being used at a corner grocery by a black man, later identified as Floyd. 46-year-old Floyd was handcuffed and put face down on the ground. Chauvin used his knee to pin Floyd's neck for about 9 minutes. Bystander video showed Floyd saying, "I can't breathe." The video sparked a worldwide response in protest over racial injustice and violent policing in the global Black Lives Matter movement. Prosecutors argued Chauvin recklessly took the life from Floyd in a misuse of force.
You will learn that on May 25th of 2020, Mr. Derek Chauvin betrayed this badge when he used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of Mr. George Floyd, that he put his knees upon his neck and his back, grinding and crushing him until the very breath, no, ladies and gentlemen, until the very life were squeezed out of him.
The defense argued Floyd died as a result of a combination of underlying health issues, illegal drug use, and resisting officers.
And you will learn that Derek Chauvin did exactly what he had been trained to do over the course of his 19-year career. The use of force is not attractive, but it is a necessary component of policing.
Hennepin County's chief medical examiner Andrew Baker concluded that it was homicide caused by Chauvin's actions.
So my opinion remains unchanged. It's what I put on the death certificate last June. That's cardiopulmonary arrest complicating law enforcement subdual restraint and neck compression. That was my top line then. It would stay my top line now.
Minneapolis Police Chief Madaria Arredondo testified that Chauvin broke the department's rules in ethics code. Chauvin invoked his Fifth Amendment right, preventing him from taking the witness stand. It took the jury less than 11 hours to find Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts. A crowd gathered outside the Minneapolis courtroom erupted in cheers. Gao Yiming, CGTN.
I can breathe.
Find the defendant guilty.
Now, for more about the murder of George Floyd, let's talk to Calvin Dark, the principal and co-founder of RC Communications in Washington. Welcome to the World Today, sir. First of all, do you see this verdict prompting any major reforms in police policy or policing in the U.S.?
Yes, I do think that when everybody saw just how egregious this case was and how even with that video that was pretty clear, we still didn't know which way this was going to go until the very moment the verdict was read. And so that is a sign that in this case, in Minneapolis, justice was done, but there has to be systematic change and reform for justice to be done in all the other cases around the country. So I do think that there's going to be renewed support and I hope passage in the Senate of the George Floyd Fair Policing Act that's already passed in the House.
And the Floyd murder and a series of subsequent events show the worst of ethnic conflict in the U.S. indeed. What are the dominant social causes here?
Well, the social causes are the same ones that we've had since the very beginning. White supremacy and systemic racism in our criminal justice system and the other underpinnings of our society. And we just haven't dealt with them. And if we deal with them one by one piecemeal, we're never going to fix the problem. So the social causes that made this horrible situation take place are the same that we've always dealt with and have yet to effectively resolve.